Good day everyone, this is Samyam Dinathan and I am here regarding our next introductory video regarding this how a deal for the export and import is collapsed when there is involvement of one or more agents, more than one agent. So I am going to continue this one. So how a proper export or import deal is collapsed when it involves more than one agent between the buyer and the seller. The seller can be say supplier, and the buyer is the end buyer. Okay, so how a deal is collapsed. Let us say you have worked, if you are an agent, and or say let's say like you are a merchant or you are a broker between the buyer and the seller. So you are a single person, and there is another agent who is from the buyer side or it's like a seller side, and he is promising you that there are some as per your requirement for the buyer. Let us say you are from the buyer side and you have a requirement for the buyer. Let us say the buyer needs like 100 tons of rice. Okay, let us say basmati rice. The buyer needs 100 tons of basmati rice, and you know about it because you know the buyer. Okay, you know the buyer, but you don't know the supplier, and you have a friend somewhere in another country, or it's like in the same country, and they say that they know a supplier who can provide you this 100 tons of basmati rice as per the buyer's quality requirement and days of duration time, like within 60 days or 30 days or 45 days, like that. So let us say how we can go for it, and what happens, and why the deal is broken in the end of the stage. So okay, I'll make use of this magnetic thing to make identification for the buyer, supplier and the agents. Okay. Let us say you are here and you are an agent. That means like you are an agent means you are not the manufacturer. Okay, you are an agent. It can also be said like you are a broker. I mean, like agent can also be called a broker, a merchant, trader, can also be called a buyer and seller. So what happens, like as I said, like we will take an example. We will, as I said, like we will take an example of 100 tons of basmati rice, and you know the buyer, and buyer has told you that he needs 100 tons of basmati rice because he has a requirement for that, and he owns something like maybe a big restaurant or something, and he needs his basmati rice. So how will we go for that? Let us say, because you know the buyer, and let us make this one this magnetic thing, a buyer. Here is the buyer, and here is the supplier. Okay, so now this buyer knows you, and let us say that he told you that let us say your name is Mr. Agent. He says, this buyer says that, Mr. Agent, I need 100 tons of basmati rice and I need it is quite urgent, like maybe let us say it is not about the time duration, but still he says like maybe 40 60 days, or in the coming 2.5 months, like 75 days. You tell him, okay, and because this buyer believes you, you ask him, okay, I will find the supplier, I will find the goods, and I will make you a deal. I'll find, because the buyer doesn't have time to go and search for the supplier to verify the quality of the basmati rice, to get a sample, anything like that. So if a buyer, because mostly these people do not have time, they have their own business to do. Yes, you accepted that, right? What they do is they will contact you if you know him. Otherwise, they will go on the they will try to find a supplier, but they do not have time, as I said. Like, so if you get to know about this requirement and he contacts you and you tell him back that, okay sir, I will find this supplier, I will find this main manufacturer as per your requirement, and I will try to provide you this 100 tons of rice, 100 tons of basmati rice. Okay, so now this is done. Another part, now you have to search Mr. Agent. Now this broker, as you know, now you have some responsibility, because you have promised, you have told him, to the buyer, and you need to make some money, you need to make some profit on this thing. So you tell the buyer in reply that, okay, you will find him and you will take him from some time, and you know what the deadline that the buyer needs within coming 2.5 months or 60 days, that it is urgent requirement. So what you have now is nothing. You do not have the product, and you need to search for the supplier. So where you will search for the supplier? Let us say you have some friends, because you are in the business and you are an agent, you are a broker, you are a merchant, you are a trader, you are a buyer and a seller, and let us say if you do not have money, so what you will do, even if you have money but you do not like 100 tons of basmati rice, is very costly. Nobody is going to invest that much amount. Who knows that maybe the buyer will purchase or not. So how you will come into this, how you will close the deal, that is the problem. So once, what you will do is now, because you do not know, first of all, the common thing what happens means, like, let us say I'm an agent, or you are an agent, and let us say if I'm an agent and I'm trying to find this supplier for this basmati rice as per the requirement of the buyer, for this the quality of basmati rice, there are many types of basmati rice, so that type of quality the buyer needs, you know about it, and you are trying to search for the supplier for that kind, but you do not know who is the supplier. So what you will do is, like, anyhow, by nature, what happens means, if you are in a business and you try to ask with your friends, ask with your business, business within your business network, that you have this requirement, and you tell to another person. So let us say you have told this thing to another person within your business network. within your network of business, you have told some people that, hey, I need this requirement and I have a buyer, and this is the requirement, like 100 of basmati rice. What you will do is, when you're saying this business network, or it's like some people come to know about this from your word of mouth. What happens means, now the supplier is nowhere. Supplier is still not in this scenario. Only you people are there. The buyer, you, and because only you were knowing until 10 minutes before or 5 minutes before, now you have told this as per your requirement to some of these guys. There are 4 people here. It can be 5 people or it can be 2 people, but I have, just for the example, I have given like 4 people. What happens now is, you see how this goes and how this deal gets collapsed. I will now okay, it will be like this only. I will delete it later. So this is number 1. Let us keep some identification for these guys. Okay, this is Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z, and okay, Mr. A. Okay, so Mr. X, Mr. Y, Mr. Z, Mr. A have come to know about this thing. Okay, what they will do is like, now Mr. X, what he will think, probably because this is human nature, well, Mr. X will think that, okay, this is 100 tons, means first he will calculate in his mind like how much it is going to be cost. So buyer has told that he needs 100 tons. You have heard that, but he didn't tell you the price, how much it can be. Never, the buyer will never say that provide me 100 tons of basmati rice per like this, like that, for the amount. He just told you. But here, this agent, who is not an agent, but can be an agent, but it is your business network, or it is like your friend circle, something like that, and you are an agent, you just try to make some luck. You think that, okay, maybe I can get some help from my people. I will try to give some, let us say, I will try to tell them, and maybe somebody can provide me this kind of 100 tons of basmati rice. Maybe somebody can know somebody in another country or in a local place to get this kind of requirement, 100 tons of basmati rice. So you will try your luck with these guys. As like, if you not, maybe you will try to browse on the internet, you will try to put it on the internet. Mostly what happens, it's not like I'm pointing out on you, it's not like I'm trying to say that, but there are many things that can be happen. Let us say you have kept this on the business network in your friend circle, and apart from that you have also given advertisement, because this is 100 tons. Maybe if you save some money on this thing, that is a big lot of money if you can save on this deal. So people on the internet, they come to know about this requirement. You have posted it. You need 100 tons of basmati rice, but you need by 60 days, like that. Many people will come to know. Many people will come to know that this is the requirement, and these people also know, and they are physically involved. Physically, they know you. You know them, apart from the internet. So you will get many inquiries from internet also. That's we can provide. We can provide. Many people will reply you. Let us say you have gone to some website like Go Forward Business, or it's like Tender Tiger. There are many websites which provide leads, and the leads can be the supplier or the agent, the buyer, or somebody like that. We cannot we cannot rely on that thing. Excuse me. Until and unless like you have physically verified that one, or you are like you know them from long past, from who you received the inquiry. So these guys know that, and apart from that, you have also posted your inquiry on the internet. So now what happens, like this guy, Mr. X, let us say, leave these people now. Let us take Mr. X. Mr. X thinks that this is the requirement 100 tons, and he thinks that okay, I will check with some supplier. If he has, or it's like he tries to say the same thing like you have told here. He will try to tell his some other friends. Let us say Mr. B, which is not here. Mr. B, he will tell to Mr. B that hey, I have this requirement for 100 tons, and this guy Mr. X tells this Mr. B that the requirement is for my friend, and he has a buyer who is related to him, and they have a good they will reach that they are good friends. So this guy is important for him. So he says like, I know this guy, and this is the requirement for 100 tons, and he says to Mr. B. Mr. B again, maybe he knows some supplier, or it's like he tells to another friend. So now, only see that how many people have got involved in this business, in this deal. Mr. Agent, you are one, okay. Now you have to do this 4 people. We don't know what they are doing on the other part, Y, Z, A. But here Mr. X is there, and Mr. X has told to Mr. B. So Mr. B, now he is trying to find some other suppliers, and he is trying to say that. So altogether now you are 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, no, 1, 2. 2 people already involved. So how many intermediaries are there? How many brokers are there now? You are here, the main person, main agent. Okay. Next, this is 1. 2 is Mr. X. Okay. 3 is Mr. B. Okay. We have not counted until now this one. I don't know like what is going on with these guys. Maybe they are also searching. Happens like that because when he is doing something, of course they are also maybe doing something. On the other hand, everybody wants to make money. Everybody wants to make some kind of money on these 100 tons of basmati rice. They will try. They will try at least. If not got a deal, maybe at least they will get you some people who are going to give you 100 tons of basmati rice. But that may happen or not. Let us see. So you have the agent. Now already 2 people are involved in your business. Okay. What happens? Let us say then, apart from these 2 people, you are also looking for supplier because you are getting internet responses from other side. These are physically related people because you know them physically, because you meet with them every couple of days as a business network, something like that. And maybe because you are early in this business, or it's like late in the business, maybe these people are early, they do not have that much experience in the export import. Happens like that, who knows. And now you are getting other responses from the internet. Many people are responding you on your email. Let us say you have a business email or a general email. Many people are replying from a business email or it's like a general email. We cannot say if they are a good person, good people, they are reliable or not, even if they have a business domain email or a general email. So now this Mr. X and Mr. B, Mr. X has told to Mr. B will respond to him, Mr. X, because Mr. B doesn't know you directly. So he will respond to Mr. X. So what happens next now? until now the supplier has not come into the picture. So we have like now Mr. B, Mr. X and Mr. B already involved in this thing, and they are trying to make a pie out of this deal, which is not yet sure that it is going to happen or not. So here is the buyer. His requirement is 100 tons. And here you are, Mr. Agent, and you have told about this requirement on internet and internet and your friends, or just friends, or internet, or both of them, friends. And Mr. X is responding you back. Mr. Y, Z and Mr. A did not respond you back. So Mr. X is responding you that okay, I'm trying to look for this thing, and we will make this deal like that. He is promising you that he is also doing some work on this thing. So now you are here. Supplier has not come into the picture yet. So let us say this buyer is in UAE, United Arab Emirates. Let us say this supplier, basically the supplier, and you are also in UAE as an agent. Okay, you are also in UAE. The buyer is in UAE. He came to you. He told you by phone or something like that, or he met you and he told you this thing, and you are in UAE. And then what happened? The supplier is in India, example, and you don't know about the supplier yet. The buyer don't know about the supplier yet. Mr. X don't know about the supplier yet. But Mr. X told to one of his friends who he thinks like, let us say, and let us see what happens if maybe we can get a deal, and maybe. So in this way, Mr. X tells, as he already said, to Mr. B. So Mr. X has already told to Mr. B. So Mr. X already told to Mr. B, who you don't know. Mr. X told to Mr. B, and Mr. B replied to Mr. X, hey, Mr. B replied to Mr. X, and he said that, yes, I have a friend, I know a company or a friend who is a supplier of sugar. And Mr. B says to Mr. X, they are based in India. Now, Mr. B told Mr. X that the supplier of basmati rice is based in India. And they have a big production unit, and they can provide this 100 tons of basmati rice, not a problem. So what this happens means, this Mr. B will tell Mr. X, but Mr. B will not disclose the address of the supplier. So Mr. B will not disclose, even nobody will disclose directly that where they are getting the products from. If they say, then of course Mr. X, because money is big, and maybe he is only a new friend or something like that, and maybe he will, because that is a business and he wants to not lose a deal, maybe he wants to try to directly contact supplier. But Mr. B didn't tell Mr. X. So what happens now? There is a kind of confusion. So Mr. B knows this address, Mr. Agent don't know, that they already have a supplier and the buyer don't know if Mr. Agent has got the supplier until now or not. So let us say 100 tons of sugar, 100 tons of basmati rice we are talking about. So let us say 1 ton basmati rice let us say 1000 kgs, means like it is coming to 1 lakh. 1 lakh. So 1 ton is costing from the supplier 100,000, okay, 100,000 Indian rupees. Okay, 1 ton basmati rice costs 1 lakh Indian rupees from supplier, and the supplier has told Mr. B it is 1 lakh Indian rupees. So what happens now? This Mr. B says that we have rice per ton 1 lakh rupees, and he says to Mr. X. So what happens next is 1 lakh into 100 tons. This is 1 lakh into 100 tons, that is nothing but coming to 100 . This is the actual figure for 100 tons basmati rice. This is the actual. That is how much? 100 lakhs. That is nothing but 10 million Indian rupees. Okay, 10 million Indian rupees. That is 100 lakhs. 100 lakhs is nothing but 10 million. 10 million Indian rupees. If you calculate this 10 million Indian rupees in, let us say, if you calculate, so in dollars it will come to some like maybe 500,000 to something like that. So there is nothing but 10 million Indian rupees. Okay, so because why I am calculating is because international transaction, everything happens in US dollar. So that is why I was trying to calculate in US dollar. So let us say, for example, now we go on with this thing for 10 million Indian rupees. Okay, so the supplier has told that to Mr. B that 100,000 Indian rupees is the cost for 100 tons of basmati rice, and we need 15 days time, like for the genuinity of the contract and this thing, supplier will inform that if you need something like that, inform us 15 days or one month before if you need it locally, and if you need it for international purpose, it will take around 45 days like that. That the supplier will say to Mr. B. So Mr. B has heard that, but there is no commission for Mr. B in this thing. Maybe the supplier would give a gift to him, like some kind of cell phone like that maybe, but that is not enough to Mr. B. What Mr. B thinks, like he needs some kind of extra, because this is a big deal, and he is in the business and he also doing some kind of hard work on a job or something like that, but he needs on the side some kind of extra money for his expenses. Now Mr. B will change the price. This happens now. Mr. B will himself change the price, and he says to Mr. X, Mr. X here, because Mr. X told to Mr. B, so Mr. B will reply to Mr. X, because Mr. B doesn't know the agent, because Mr. X has not told Mr. B the about Mr. Agent, because Mr. B can double cross Mr. X. That's why he did not tell him. So Mr. B will reply to Mr. X that, hey, I have spoken with the supplier, and the supplier has agreed for these tons, and he is the actual manufacturer. He is the supplier of. He is basically a real supplier, manufacturer of basmati rice. He has a production unit, everything. He will say blah blah blah, and Mr. He will ask him that 100 tons of basmati rice will cost to Mr. Agent, to Mr. X. He will tell him that per ton it is 1 lakh, let us say 20,000 rupees, because that is a big quantity. Everybody wants to make money, and by calculation he will think that 100 tons will make a lot of money. So he will try to say that, let us say 20,000, or say, let us say, if he even does not say 20,000, 1,20,000, let us say Mr. B will tell to Mr. X, yeah, I have this rice and it is costing 1,05,000 per ton, and time frame for local is 15 days, for international at least 45 days, like that, for this production of 100 tons, for 100 tons. International. Now what happens? This company, 1,05,000 is the thing. Now Mr. X knows about that. Okay, Mr. X says Mr. B, okay, I will contact my agent, and he will tell the thing. He will decide. He will discuss with his buyer, and he will tell. But Mr. B has not told about the address of the supplier to Mr. X. So Mr. X doesn't know exact price of the basmati rice. He thinks basmati rice is costing him 1,05,000 per ton, and for 100 tons is going to become, how much is it going to become? 100 tons will come to 1,05,000 into 100. Let me check. I think my calculator is, I do not have the calculator, is not working. 1 second. Okay, anyhow, that is a simple calculation. So 1,05,000 comes to this one. 1,05,000 comes to this much of Indian rupees. Now if we calculate this amount in US dollars, that's why I've taken the calculator. When you divide this amount, 1,500,000 divided by, let us say the exchange currency rate is, it does not matter if it is being exported to United Arab Emirates or America, or it's like anywhere in the world, but the exchange rate and this currency exchange that only takes place everything in the US dollar. So that is divided into by, let us say the currency exchange is 70 for USD for 70 US for 70 rupees Indian, it will come to $1,50,000. US dollar 1,50,000. Okay, I hope you are able to see that one. That is US dollars 1,50,000 for this transaction to happen, for this deal to complete. So 1,50,000 is this thing. Now keep in mind this figure, because I want to show how the deal collapses here. So from Mr. X, Mr. Agent, he has told now this has come to here, and Mr. X has told to Mr. B. Mr. B replied that it will happen, and he found a supplier who is able to provide this one. Now what happens? Now what happened? Because Mr. X, Mr. B has told, Mr. B replied, Mr. B replied to Mr. X, replied to Mr. X, 100 tons is available, and cost is 1,50,000 USD. So now Mr. B knows the price. At least he has some price in his mind now, because Mr. X has told him, Mr. B has told Mr. X that 1,50,000 USD for 100 tons of basmati rice to from the supplier's warehouse, because until now Mr. B didn't say the supplier. The end buyer is in UAE, and there is another party in between, that is Mr. Agent. He did not say. Mr. B asked this supplier that his friend Mr. X needs 100 tons of basmati rice. So the supplier doesn't know about the agent, the end buyer. The supplier only knows about Mr. X, because regarding Mr. X, even the supplier doesn't know about Mr. X whereabouts. Only the supplier knows Mr. B, but Mr. B said, like, Mr. X is somebody I know, and if you can make a deal with this thing, I will take this 100 tons sugar and provide it to him from your production unit. So now Mr. X has been told that this is $1,50,000. What will happen means, Mr. X will convey this thing to the agent, convey about this thing to the agent. What happens now is Mr. X wants to make some money. If he is trying so hard and he doesn't make any money, and if he is trying so hard and he has got somebody reliable from his side who is having some kind of relation and some kind of unique authority, and has got a supplier also who is trying to provide this one. In the meantime, also this Mr. B has got a sample from the supplier of the basmati rice. Let us take it that way. In a favorable manner, this deal is going to be done. Okay. Supplier has given Mr. B a sample of the basmati rice let us say supplier has given like 2 kg basmati rice, 2 kg rice with a proper packing, and he asked him that, okay, here this supplier will tell Mr. B, please provide this sample to your party and let me know the reply. So Mr. B has two things now. He says that the cost is this one, and he also gives this sample. What will happen now is this sample is now with Mr. X, because Mr. B in return has provided this sample from his side to Mr. X. So Mr. X has the sample, he has the price, he will contact this Mr. Agent. So now you will ask like how this sample is going to be reached, because the agent is in UAE and the supplier is in India. See, for this supplier to send this sample to UAE, he can send directly by courier to him. If he doesn't know the buyer or the agent, so what he will do is like he will try to provide money in a sample, and these people will try, because if this person is in Mr. B is in India, Mr. X is in UAE, because I told you that Mr. Agent has contacted some people in his network. He told him, and he contacted him by the way of telephone or email, something like that. And after getting this sample from the supplier to Mr. B physically, Mr. B will go to the courier and something way in a way he will send this sample to Mr. X. Mr. B will send this sample to Mr. X. In this way, the sample has been received to Mr. X. Now Mr. X has the figure, he has the proper email from Mr. B, and there is some kind of communication going on, and as apart from telephone, everything like that. So now Mr. X will provide this sample to Mr. Agent. This now, so Mr. Agent, and he will say, Mr. X will say to Mr. Agent, this is a sample of 2 kg. Okay, let us say this is the box of the sample, 2 kg rice. Mr. X will provide to him. Second thing, Mr. X will also say that instead of $1,50,000, because now it is $1,50,000, but Mr. X will say to Mr. Agent, he wants to save his money. Okay, Mr. X wants to also make some kind of money, and he will ask Mr. B, is there any kind of commission in this one? So Mr. B will say, see, there is not much commission, but the supplier is going to give me. He will say in this way. Probably this happens most of the time, and that's why the deal is broken down. Because nobody wants to be open and transparent in the business, and they want to be disclosing everything to the agent. If they would have disclosed everything in a proper order from the supplier, everything, that this would not have been done. Why the deal gets broken is this is the problem. Now the sample has been provided to Mr. Agent from Mr. X, and apart from this thing, the cost is $1,50,000 in USD. So now Mr. X is calculating how much he has to say to Mr. Agent to make his own money. So 1,05,000 rupees INR rupees is the cost for 1 ton. Cost for 1 ton of basmati rice for, let us say, BR basmati rice. Okay. Now this is the cost from Mr. B. Remember, the supplier cost was only 1 lakh rupees. Now he has kept per ton 5,000 rupees, because he thought like, maybe let us keep 5 rupees on 1 kg of rice. So 1,000 on 1 ton we can earn at least 5,000 rupees. That is not a big deal. Okay, that is fine. But what happens in the deal is, now you will see. Mr. B has told this one. Now Mr. X will put another 5,000 for his own sake, for his own benefit, because he has done also some kind of work. He has provided the sample to Mr. Agent and is now provided the sample to Mr. Agent. He has worked hard in this thing. So now Mr. X will say, example, let us say it is not 5,000, or he will keep his own 5,000 again now. Okay, so it is 1,10,000 Indian rupees per ton. Now Mr. X will say 1 lakh Indian rupees per ton. So Mr. X will say for 100 tons it is costing 1 lakh 10,100. So when we calculate 1 lakh this thing in US dollars, why I am trying to convert now is because important. See, we were using the exchange currency rate for 70 rupees for 1 US dollar. So we will be using the same exchange rate now also, because we are not going to change it to 67 or 60 or something. So 1 lakh 10,000 60 divided by 70. Now this is going to become 1,57,142.857. Let us forget about 8 dot this change thing and let us keep directly the round figure. Okay, 143 instead of 2.857 we will keep 143. So this is nothing but US dollar. So in a proper manner to write US dollar is US dollar like 1,57,143. So I hope you are able to see this thing. It is a little bit smaller, but this is the thing. Now 1,57,143 is the thing. This cost is of Mr. X, and this cost of Mr. X to Mr. Agent, and Mr. Agent has not kept any of his own benefits on this cost. Now Mr. Agent, if will buy from these people, from this Mr. B, Mr. X, then he has to buy in this price. Let us say he is going to buy. Okay, let us say he is not going to buy, but now without investing any money, how the deal is going to be done? Mr. X has told Mr. Agent that I was talking about Mr. Agent. So Mr. Agent will be able to buy. No, let's keep it like not buy. In this way I was telling. Mr. Agent will the cost for this is like 1,57,143, which is heard by Mr. X to him. And also Mr. Agent has a sample. Mr. Agent is here, has a sample now, sample of 2 kg basmati rice, and Mr. Agent has also the price of this thing. The price is 1,57,000 USD. Okay, so now this is the thing. Now Mr. Agent comes to know, okay, this is the thing. So he will think that, okay, the proper way is Mr. Agent, what he will do now, if to go the deal in a proper way, to save the deal and to make benefit to everyone in this thing. But what happens in the deal, you will see. This Mr. Agent has sample 2 kg. Why I am trying to write again and again this thing is because actually you will remember how this is going to be done and what happens with these parties. 2 kg and also price 1,57,143 to this thing. Now if this agent is very real, what he will do is now Mr. Agent will ask to whom? He will ask to Mr. X. Mr. X that to save to save the deal. To save the deal, Mr. Agent will ask Mr. X that, okay, I will confirm this with my buyer with this sample, and he will also ask that I will confirm this price with my buyer for this thing. Once the buyer will accept, we will continue with this deal, he will say. But what happens? The buyer, in case, let us say the buyer likes the sample and the sample is really good with the basmati rice, and the buyer says, okay, yes, this is the one I need, and this is the sample I need, and it is very good. I would like to order this one for the 100 tons I need, and let's go ahead with this thing. So buyer says, okay. Buyer replies to Mr. X, replies to Mr. Agent. Okay, done. He will ask like how much is the time duration for this thing to reach UAE from India, because Mr. Agent has not disclosed anything to the buyer, and Mr. Buyer anyhow believes Mr. Agent, and he did not ask about the supplier. He knows only that the supplier is in India, and the buyer believes Mr. Agent, and Mr. Agent has given this thing, the deal is okay now. Until now the deal is okay. Now what happens? The Mr. Agent has not kept, because Mr. Agent is very strict person, and because he wants to some kind of gift from Mr. Buyer, let us say not a gift or anything like that, let us say Mr. Agent from the buyer side, he wants to save the deal, and he wants to communicate with Mr. X and also try to bargain on the price. Now what will happen is, when this Mr. X told him this price, the agent has told him this price. Now because he also already knows, Mr. Agent already knows that there is some kind of commission with these people already added to this amount. Now what will happen is, Mr. Agent will try to negotiate with Mr. X. Mr. Agent will try to negotiate with Mr. X. Okay, this is the price, 143. Okay, 143 USD. Or let us say in anything like maybe 1,10,000 rupees for 1 ton, and Mr. Agent will try to negotiate with Mr. X. He will ask him that, okay, is there any chance of negotiation? He will ask him, please decrease some amount on this thing, because the agent wants to save the deal. It's like Mr. Agent will also ask for a discount to Mr. X. Mr. Agent primarily also ask Mr. Agent to step back and provide, this is the main important thing, and provide the detail of the another agent. Who is the other agent? Mr. X has been told by Mr. B, remember. So Mr. Agent will ask Mr. X for some discount, and he will also ask him to step back from the deal and be he will ask him that, don't be worried about your money, your commission, I will save it from the deal and I will give it to you once the deal is done. So he will ask him to step back and provide one person name so that this deal can happen. So he will ask him to step back and provide the detail of the another agent, who is Mr. B, who has a direct contact with the supplier in India. Mr. B has direct contact with the supplier in India, direct contact. Now what happens? Mr. B then maybe if he say that okay, I will try to negotiate with Mr. B, and remember Mr. X has already negotiated with Mr. B, but Mr. B said that there is the price is 1,05,000 real, 5,000 Indian rupees, and there is no kind of any negotiation, because this is what I have tried to negotiate with the main supplier. Mr. B will say in this way. So, and the main supplier has agreed for 1,05,000 rupees. He will say. So what happens now? What happens now is Mr. B, Mr. X, so here Mr. Agent has asked him to step back and provide the details of Mr. B, whoever it is, because Mr. B has direct contact with the supplier. Now, why he asking? Why Mr. X, Mr. Agent is asking for Mr. X to step back, and asking also about the details of Mr. B, because Mr. Agent wants to save the deal. To save the deal, and by contacting Mr. B. Now this one, now he wants to contact Mr. B, and in the same sense, because you see, if this buyer is going to make an LC, one-time transferable LC, on the name of Mr. Agent, because Mr. Buyer only knows Mr. Agent, he doesn't know the supplier. And anyhow, in the business thing, to save the business, Mr. Agent will never say the supplier name or address to the buyer. Nobody will do that. If he does that, there is no business. The buyer will, after some time contact the supplier. He will make the deal directly. Okay. So in this scenario, LC is made on the name of Mr. Agent, who is an agent who has some kind of small office or whatever. He has an import-export license in UAE, and he is an end buyer, and he is a trader in the middle, agent, or let us say broker or whatever, and supplier is in India. So LC, why Mr. Agent is trying to ask these people, Mr. X and Mr. B, is to take a step back. This is going to be a bigger problem. Already they have this supplier, they have the sample, everything is done, but there is a kind of cheating. I mean, like, it is not a cheating, but everybody wants to save some kind of money in their hard work, and they want to make it fruitful, and they want to make it some kind of money on 100 tons of rice, basmati rice. Everybody will want to have this kind of pie in this thing. I mean, like, some kind of benefit. So when Mr. Agent will ask Mr. X to step back, Mr. X in this thing may or may not be able to want to step back, because if he is going to step back, something like that, then what will happen means, because he asked Mr. X, the Mr. Agent has asked Mr. X for the discount on this thing, but Mr. X lied to him because that was his business and he wants to make some profits. That's why he said like 1,57,143, or else like you say 1,10,000 Indian rupees is for 1 ton cost of basmati rice. When changed to 100 tons, it is coming to this one. But the actual price is 1 lakh rupees only for 1 ton of basmati rice from the supplier side. So both of these middlemen have kept 5,000 each. So Mr. Agent has now asked them to step back, but these guys will not step back. If he even steps back, then the rate was 1 lakh rupees only, but here it is as per 1,10,000 rupees. Okay, now he says like, where is my commission? How can I rely on the commission? How I am going to get it? Why is Mr. Agent wanting to ask them, these guys, to step back is because, as I was telling just now, is the buyer is able to, the Mr. Agent is able to receive only one-time transferable letter of credit. This one-time transferable letter of credit, because the buyer will make only DLC, documentary letter of credit, which is one-time transferable, can be transferred, can be made on one's name. The LC can be made, letter of credit can be made on one person name, and it can be transferred to another person name only one time. Another person name from Mr. Agent's side, he can transfer this same LC to another person or the said amount, another person only one time. That means that is the meaning of that one-time transferable LC. If I make LC on somebody, they can, if I am the end buyer, I am making an LC on one person, he can transfer that LC to another person only one time under this transaction. So until here, Mr. Agent asked him to step back, but Mr. X is thinking that how can I save money on that one of the deal, and like this he has many hundreds of questions, how it is going to be fruitful, how I can make 100 tons of sugar if he is going to step back. So what he will do is, like, he will not rely on Mr. Agent, and he will think that Mr. Agent is going to cheat him out of his own money, which is not his money, but still because of his hard work he doesn't want to give the details of Mr. B to make the deal. Let us say, even if he has given the details and of Mr. B, so what will happen means Mr. B will be asked again, what is the price of this thing? So Mr. B has told to Mr. X 1,05,000 real per ton. So but Mr. Agent has know about the price of 1,10,000 real per ton, Indian rupees, and Mr. B has given the price for 1,05,000 real. Now there is a mismatch of the price. Okay, leave about the price. Now what happens means, let us say, if this Mr. Agent believes these people, Mr. X and Mr. B, okay, this happens mostly in this scenario. Mr. Agent doesn't have that much, and because these people are trying to lie or something like that, and in this scenario what will happen means, these two people are already in the business, okay. Now Mr. B will say, okay, we will make a deal, and Mr. Agent is going to make this LC is being made on Mr. Agent's name, okay, because Mr. Agent has a import-export license, he is into the business, he is a trader, he is a merchant, he is a broker, he is a buyer and a seller, all these things. So what will happen is, this buyer is going to make this LC on Mr. Agent. Now Mr. Agent has two more parties who he has to make the LC, but he cannot make the LC because it is only one time transferable. So that means that the LC is only one time transferable, means the end supplier must get the LC after from Mr. Agent, because it can be only transferred one time to the supplier, okay, can only be transferred next time one time. These two people cannot get the LC on their name. If they get the LC and they try to transfer, it cannot be transferred because it is only one time transferable. So this buyer tries to make LC on this agent name, and he will transfer this LC final time on the supplier name. But now, so these two people, okay, Mr. B has agreed and said like, okay, he will make a promissory note or something like that, that Mr. X and Mr. B, Mr. Agent will try to safeguard their interest by providing some kind of promissory letter that, see guys, this is 100 tons of sugar and I will take a promissory note for you guys, and once you step back and once the deal is happening, I will try to provide you whatever the thing, whatever the properties. So remember, Mr. Agent has told the correct price to Mr. Buyer. Does it happen most of the time? It doesn't happen. Mr. Agent has his own thing because he's a trader. If he is going to give this same price what these guys have told, maybe he is able to give the right price, or else like maybe because he's in a business, he will of course know that these guys are also trying to make some commission. So in that scenario, he will try to find the right price. But actually the right price is here with this one. So how he is going to save for these two guys their thing? So anyhow, because he is in the business, Mr. Agent, he will try to give some price to Mr. Buyer. So what will happen is like Mr. Buyer knows the price is this one. Okay. Now Mr. B has given price for 100 tons is $1,50,000, and this here the price for 1 ton is 1,57,143. Because he already told this buyer that this is the price 1,57,143. Mr. Agent has told the buyer, apart from negotiating with these guys, he has come to a final thing that okay, this is the price for this thing. So what will happen is, now the buyer has already made the LC on agent name, Mr. Agent name, for $1,50,000, 57,000. So because this is not clear, I am going to strike it off and write the next steps. Okay, so in this scenario we see this is very clear that Mr. Buyer, Mr. Agent, but we have two more parties over there. But actually, basically, what happens means there are many parties involved, but I am trying to take only few parties. But you think about it. I have not taken into consideration about the replies that are coming from the internet, and if there is going to be a deal from those guys also. If the agent has not seen particularly Mr. B or Mr. X and the response is from internet side, and some other parties are involved which Mr. Agent doesn't know and is trying to make analysis on those people, and the actual price from the supplier side is something other, and what these guys in the middle have told the price is something other. So now what happens means Mr. LC, Mr. Buyer, who has made the LC for, let us say, because Mr. Agent told the price 1,57,143. Okay, so if he has told this same price, okay, let us see what will happen. 1 lakh. So LC is made, LC done. One-time transferable documentary letter of credit from, let us say, bank. There are many banks in UAE. Okay, let us say one name, Bank of UAE. The LC has been made by buyer to name of Mr. Agent. Okay, so this is the issuing bank. Okay, and here this is the accepting bank. Okay, let us say it is advising bank. Okay, or else like let us say he has a bank account in something. I will not prescribe here it is advising bank or else like it is a accepting bank. Let us say he has a bank account and there is nothing but he is account holder of and he has a business account. Mr. Agent has a business account and that too he has the import export license everything and he has the account. So in some kind of bank in UAE only. Okay, so let us say this another bank is HSBC UAE. HSBC UAE. So the LC is one time transferable. So LC was made on his name to the name of Mr. Agent, HSBC Bank, one time transferable letter of credit. See, this one time transferable letter of credit was advised by the Mr. Agent because Mr. Agent told, that's why this LC has been made by the buyer, because Mr. Agent told to the buyer that there is a supplier and I need to transfer this LC on his name once you make it on my name. So I am anyhow legally responsible on this thing and it will be one time transferred to the supplier, so the supplier can provide the goods to you or else like to me and I will transfer these goods to you. So anyhow this business happens and the buyer knows about this thing. So Mr. Buyer believes Mr. Agent, that's why he has given this contract of finding this personality rights. That's why everything is happening in a friendly manner, in a straight manner. So after receiving this one, now Mr. Agent one time transfer he received this one. So now he has to transfer this LC to supplier name. In India. Let us say the bank in India is HSBC India. Okay, let us say it is in let us say this bank is in Delhi, India. Because the bank is in Delhi, India means like I mean to say that the supplier is based in India. The LC has been transferred finally because it is one time transferable. Now it is transferred to the supplier based in India in the HSBC bank because he has this supplier has his business account on his company name, XYZ company whatever, in the HSBC bank in Delhi state, country India. Because now HSBC has sent this. So what was the LC cost? I mean like what was the LC made for? The LC was made for 1 lakh 57,143 US dollar. And now while making this LC, so okay, 1,57,000, this is the LC, this is the cost and being given to Mr. Agent. Now Mr. Agent has received this one into his bank. Now what will happen means Mr. Agent, the actual price is not from 1,57,143. The actual price is 1,50,000 US dollar. From whom? That is also from Mr. B. But that is also not the right price. But Mr. B did not tell the right price. Okay, if let us say Mr. B has also said the right price, but Mr. Agent already said that the price for one is 1,57,143, which he did not default anything, but he straightly told, even after negotiating with these two guys, he told that this is the price to the buyer. So buyer said, okay, I will make this thing, and he has made this LC. Until now the deal is going okay, and he has got this LC, and the agent has got this LC. Now the LC has to be made already he received the LC, but because he has an account, he is the account holder, and he has a business account with this thing, so UAE, HSBC. Now, how the bank will make money and how he is going to make money, because it is a one-time transferable LC, he will make another LC. This agent, he will make another LC. That is what the bank does. After discussing with the bank, he will say that this is the thing, and I have this thing, I have a client. He will tell the bank manager or exim department, export-import department people, export-import manager that I have to remake the LC because that is what that is his business. So he will make another LC depending on, let us say, 1,50,000. So I think 1,50,000 was not the actual cost from the supplier. I will calculate just now, and actual cost from supplier is actual cost of this one is for supplier cost is basically supplier cost. Actually, the supplier cost was 1 lakh Indian rupees per ton. 1 lakh INR. So 1 lakh, this one is basically, when changed to US dollar, at the rate of this one, 1 lakh, this one is only 1,428.57 USD. For 1 lakh rupees, this is the US dollar. So for 100 tons of this one is have to be multiplied by 100. So for this thing into 100 is 1,42,000. $857.143. This is the actual price of 100 tons sugar from this supplier. 100 tons sugar, 100 tons, basmati rice is equals $1 US, 1,42,857.143. This is the cost, but you see the problem here is LC was made this thing 1,57,000. So what is the difference? Let us see one time. What is the difference between this LC and this LC cost? 1,57,143 minus 1,42,857. I will calculate on my mobile. 1,57,000 minus 1,57,143 minus 1,42,857. Now the difference is 14,286 dollars. That is the difference of the amount, which is the thing. 14,286 and this is the amount. That is the difference. So now what happens means, while making the LC, the buyer will negotiate, of course, for the product price. While making the LC, the buyer will try to negotiate for the product price based on some criteria that he wants the product to arrive within a time frame, or it's like he wants some kind of discount for 100 tons of sugar, 100 tons of basmati rice he's taking. Everybody wants a discount, and because that is a last deal. So still, what will happen is, if the buyer is real or fake, okay, 14,286 is the actual price. Now what happens? The buyer mostly, in a way, intermediaries, agents, brokers, merchants, traders, buyers, sellers, the middle party, mostly should avoid this performance guarantee. Should avoid the performance guarantee. Now the performance guarantee thing will come into play, and this will destroy the thing. How does that thing comes into play? Means because already when the deal was about to be happen, to safeguard the deal, this Mr. Agent have promised many things to the buyer, that and depending on that thing, the buyer has hold on the agent, because the agent is going to supply him the 100 tons of basmati rice. In this scenario, what happened? The buyer, mostly the agent, to safeguard the deal, he will try to negotiate for the price, because he already negotiated for the price with these guys, Mr. X and Mr. B. And Mr. X and Mr. B have not given any kind of negotiation. They said like, this is the price, this is the price. So in this scenario, this agent could have kept his own price. Maybe that would have given him $1,60,000 instead of $1,57,000. But he knew, he doubted on these two guys, Mr. X and Mr. B, and that's why he did not change the price. And he said like, okay, I will safeguard your interest. And he said like, okay, we will keep the $1,57,000, and because already he set that price to the buyer. So this is the thing, and actually it is costing for the supplier 1,42,457. Anyhow, the cost for the supplier should be has to be cheaper compared to this price, because they have to make commissions on this thing. Supplier is not going to give from this any money to these guys, because the rate was fixed over here. Now what happens? The LC was made on some kind of performance, some kind of guarantee, some kind of contract in this thing while negotiating, because these guys did not try to negotiate, did not try to get any discounts. They wanted to safeguard their interest, and they wanted to make some money, and they did not in the initial stage have not taken any step back. So now this thing, the Mr. Agent has this kind of price before the buyer. The difference is 14,286. Now what happens means, performance guarantee is there. What happens mostly in the trading scenario, the agents, the supplier, they come into deal with, they come into the deal in some kind of thing, or it's like the buyer will try to play a game from some other country, some other place. Here both are at the same place, but who knows if the agent is in UAE and the buyer is in America or something like that, or Canada or Russia, and they are trying to play a mind game, and they try to make a deal, they will try to make an LC just to show up. And what happens means, once because they know that there is some kind of this thing, they try to negotiate on a performance guarantee. So anyhow, from here Mr. Agent has negotiated for a performance guarantee, which is nothing but PG, performance guarantee, for 2%. This is also called performance bond. Anyway, that is the performance bond. This is written in the LC. I will take a break. Now it is Azan time. Hello everyone. Actually, I have taken a break and I'm back now. So we were discussing about the performance bond and performance guarantee, uh, vice versa. So performance guarantee is like, and performance bond is like when you negotiate with your buyer, from like Mr. Agent has negotiated with the buyer that to safeguard the deal, he said like, okay sir, we'll try to make a discount, but already the discount has been placed. He will say like that, most probably, and to safeguard the deal, he will say like, okay, we will try to, because the buyer wants some kind of guarantee in this thing, like at least if there is no discount, we can give a guarantee that 2% performance bond if the shipment is not arrived within 45 days, like that. So depending on the scenario, like what has happened between this time duration, from the Mr. B, Mr. X, and contacting with the supplier and preparing the goods, everything. Now the performance within the duration of the schedule for how the deal is going to be placed. Now, as per this thing, the Mr. Agent was able to negotiate something with supplier about this product, and Mr. Supplier is waiting for his LC, and Mr. Agent is waiting for his LC, and depending on this negotiation with the supplier, because they have the right deal, Mr. Agent give a performance guarantee, a performance bond with the buyer. In return, Mr. Agent also is a buyer instead of the real buyer. Mr. Agent is the end buyer for the supplier from India, right? Because Mr. Agent is the one who is going to place the order from supplier based on this LC receiving from Mr. Buyer in UAE. So in this thing, what happens means Mr. Agent will also ask a performance bond or performance guarantee from supplier, because let us say supplier has given a guarantee of performance bond for a 2% to Mr. Agent. In return, what we'll do is Mr. Agent will make a performance guarantee to this thing. The mistake where happens means like the performance bond or performance guarantee for this thing is, let us say 2% performance bond or this performance bond for 1,57,000 USD comes to how much? About 3,000 change, because 2% means this one, 2 into 1571, that comes to 2 ones are 2, 14 for the 10, 11, 31. Okay, this is the performance bond for $3,142 to buyer from agent, and this supplier will make performance bond to the agent on the basis of this amount. So 2% of this one is 2 into 1,428. That equals to 856, 2,856 dollars. Now the difference here is I have given very short amount of this one. Basically, the amount is very higher compared to this one, because I have kept only 5,000 per ton, like that. Sometimes mostly what happens means like people try to keep very high thing in this because in USD, like that. So based on this thing, let us say it is only 40,286 for this one. So 2,856 is a 2% performance bond for supplier. That means if the supplier fails to provide within the time duration these goods to the agent, that means the agent has not provided, is failed, vice versa, to provide the goods to the buyer. in the sense, right? So in this failure, what happens? This buyer will complain to the bank. Which bank? Bank of UAE. Bank of UAE. Saying that the time duration has been lapsed and this agent was not able to complete the consignment within the time duration. Let us say, even if the time duration or something the buyer is not liking with the agent, or there is some kind of misunderstanding, or if the buyer wants to play in the real scenario, most of the time from some, let us say he's from some other country and he just wants to play with his sincerity and like that. So what happens means they will complain to their own bank based on the LC, and they say that the negotiation is not going fine and I have created the LC, so please cancel the LC. So based on this thing, what the bank will see is, try to safeguard the interest of their client. Here the bank will try to safeguard the interest of their client. Here there is no bank. Here is only accepting bank. Here is the issuing bank. Here is the issuing bank. Here is the accepting bank. So the accepting bank will do nothing. Here once they make the complaint for this LC and they say that there is a performance bond already noted in the letter of credit, and there was some kind of misunderstanding, and when they cancel, now based on the performance bond, 2% of performance bond or 2% performance guarantee, $3,142 has to be paid to this buyer based on his loss, and this amount will be paid from this bank, HSBC Bank, UAE, and this amount to agent will be paid based on failure from this bank, because this bank has accepted, this acceptance bank from SBI, which was Delhi, has accepted the LC from this bank. So based on acceptance of the LC and the criteria, based on the failure of some kind of this thing, once he will cancel, then he has to cancel, otherwise he has to pay from his own pocket. So this agent, so he will, in the sense, he will cancel from here. So once he cancels, this bank will pay to this bank will pay to this bank. On the whole scenario, this agent will get paid from this company, from this SBI bank. The SBI bank will deduct from the supplier end, from the supplier's account. Once the supplier's account is deducted, he will be paid. How much? 2,856. But this amount is not going into his pocket. This amount is not going to his pocket because he is actually only the agent. He is a trader. LC, everything has been done in a proper way, but he is paid. But he has to still pay 3,142. So this amount has been received into his account, but bank will ask him to put the remaining. How much is that? 3,142 minus 2,856. How much is that? Let us say, calculate from here. So it is 12 minus 6, 6, 3 minus 13 minus 5, 8. So it comes to 144 plus 142. 286. Apart from this $2,856, he has to add from his own pocket this $286 to pay to cover this $3,142 to this man, this buyer. So on the whole, what happened means the buyer has received $3,142 based on the performance bond 2%. Okay, he himself has to six plus the amount which was received from this supplier company because they failed in some kind of thing. Let it be, if they do not fail and they are passed, still if this guy doesn't fail, but if this buyer want to play a game, play a game and they want to make a performance bond in the LC, later they try to cancel this one, they will get this 2 performance bond into their pocket. This company and this bank will, because they are the main issuer of the LC, they have the right for this thing. So 3,142 gone, they have this guy has gone to his pocket. From this one, the LC charges will be deducted and the LC will be paid. LC charges will be paid to the bank. Remaining money from this 3,142, let us say the LC was made for 1,142. Okay, from the bank. So how much is remaining? $2,000. 2,000 USD will go to his pocket, the buyer's pocket. Here there is loss because they have this amount. Here there is loss. Here there is loss of this amount. Here there is loss of this amount. Because this is a banking transaction and things have based on this kind of thing. This guy wanted to play a game, but let it be he is not here in UAE, there in the UAE, but some other country, who knows, but this happens in this way. I'll get back, 1 minute. Hello again. So we were discussing about the loss of this guy, Mr. Agent, for $26 plus 2,086. Now, if in case this bank, they say in some scenario, if this bank doesn't accept, then both of these amounts will be deducted from him by this bank, HSBC. Both of these amounts will be deducted from him by this bank, HSBC, and in return they will pay to this bank. In return they will pay to this bank of UAE. So this is the thing, like when a deal fails, this is because first of all, what his fault, Mr. Agent, what fault he did was, I'll let you know now. Mr. Agent from UAE, he was unhelpful from these two guys, Mr. B and Mr. X, who gave him two other prices. So, and he did not play from anything from his side, but he gave the real price, what he received, to this person. So The problem is people do not step back and they do not trust each other, and they in the business scenario. So have to be first mindful of who you are doing business with. Mr. B, Mr. X, Mr. B. Mr. X is related to Mr. B, but Mr. B is not related to Mr. Agent. Mr. X is related to Mr. Agent, but he is not related to the supplier. The thing is like in import export, very good amount of money can be made if at all the network is good, and when you do business with people who are experienced, who can understand things, then only you can sustain in this business. Otherwise it is not possible to do an import export deal anytime in a life. It is a real scenario. This business is unforgiving. Once you step into this one, if you are into the business for a long haul, for a long time, and you have learned the tricks of the trade, and how you can manage people, manage the business, manage supplier, manage seller, manage the buyer, and how you can manage many things have to be learned for in this business. First of all, now this deal is collapsed. This is one of the ways the deal gets collapsed. I'll let you know. Being an intermediary or an agent, you say, or a merchant or a broker or a trader or a buyer or seller. An agent is also a buyer and a seller. So when you are stepping into this business, merchant or trader has to know these things below. Apart from knowing the business himself, regarding how the export and import deal happens, the trader, the agent, if he is a primary agent or a mandate to a buyer or a seller, or he is just a broker, anything, merchant, he has to know, apart from the business, how the transaction happens, apart from that, he has to know how to deal with buyer, which is end buyer, or a trader, let us say, whatever. He has to know how to deal with the buyer, with the supplier, or say manufacturer or whatever, and he also has to know what is the law, international law. So he should know about law, international. He has to know about the career, FOB, CIF, and how the transportation of the goods, X works, whatever. So at least he must know FOB, CIF, cost insurance, freight overboard or free on board, these things, and transportation. First of all, you must have to know how the LC is made, letter of credit, and what are its main points which should be included in the LC. Main points which should be included in the LC. So because LC is supported from international law, International Chamber of Commerce, and this is the main thing which mostly end buyer and supplier, the real people, they use, the real businesses they use. And being an intermediary, if you don't want to invest any money, you can make money through this kind of thing. And as per global law, international law, an intermediary, broker, agent, mandate, or merchant, trader, whatever say, they have support from the global law as per International Chamber of Commerce, Paris. They have the support from the global law to do business with the buyer and the supplier being an intermediary. Okay, So the intermediary, because they do a big job, because buyers and suppliers are they busy in their manufacturing and their usage and their businesses. So the intermediary plays a big role in this business. So he must know about the buyer, negotiation with the buyer, negotiation with the supplier properly, the international law, and the transportation thing, which is mostly used like FOB or CI, how to make a letter of credit, main points thing, and he has to know about the C and F agent. Must, I mean, like he has to know some knowledge about C and F, cost and freight agent, clearing and forwarding agent. He has to have a network, one or two people at least in a country. As like on the whole, if he is concentrating on some one country, he should have one kind of C and F agent in his contacts, apart from contacts with the supplier and the buyers. So this can safeguard him and make him a deal soon as possible if he has good knowledge about all these things. So he has to know about the shipment thing, and he has to know about these things. These are the things important, and he has to know how to find a fake offer. If he is not able to find the fake offer, there is no use of being him an agent, because these are the things like 10,000 fake offers you will find on the internet, and also there are very word of mouth people who say that they have a lot of quantity of things like that, but basically those people are also saying from another's mouth, like they do not have direct hold of these products. So the intermediary has to have knowledge to how to spot the fake offers, how to spot it, and how to negotiate with the supplier and the buyer, and how to negotiate with the right people, and how to negotiate with the agents, other agents who are involved, who are also part in a deal. Like we had just one deal, and in that scenario, Mr. X and Mr. D, only two people were there, but the deal collapsed. And this guy, maybe he was in a reliable manner. Who knows? He was not cheating, but he was also trying to support this thing. But maybe something has come up, and he changed his mind, and this guy cancelled the LC. That's why here agents who are part in a deal, they must be reliable. So he must know how to rely these guys, other agents in a deal, and how to take proper hold of the deal by negotiating with these other agents and putting them back, asking them to step back, and involving himself in the deal. And he must know how to give them a trustworthy answer. Like he must be able to provide a promissory note. I am writing a promissory note. This promissory note is nothing but the intermediary production guarantee, which is called in another language as an abbreviation IPG, intermediary production guarantee. This intermediary production guarantee, what it is like, it is a promissory note which says that, and this can be raised in international law, international code of law. This promissory note, which is IPG, this will safeguard each agent and each intermediary in a part of deal with their amount of thing. Like once the deal is done, then these agents will get their money once the instrument for the letter of credit is activated. So they must rely. So everybody has to have some kind of trust, and some kind of, they should be in a positive way, and the deal should be in that manner. Only then the deal can be completed. So this is the one, IPG. So now in the next thing I will explain, like if there is only one intermediary involved between a buyer and a seller, then how the deal can be completed without any investment of money with a letter of credit. So now this is the end, and I will continue with another chapter which I will explain about how a deal can be done by a merchant or a trader or an intermediary based on his import-export license, and how he can close the deal without any investment from his own side. That is the thing. So we'll continue with the next class. Okay, thank you.